This is dHunter and my lovely wife Patricia bringing you yet another movie review. This is another Star Trek movie review. We're going to be reviewing Star Trek Beyond, which is the 13th movie in the Star Trek franchise and the third movie in the Kelvin timeline. This movie is directed by Justin Lin, who's more of an action director. He did one of the Fast and Furious movies, and of course they're trying to make these movies a little more action-oriented. And that's okay for the newer audience, but it's sort of the epitome of what Star Trek is not. And Star Trek does have action, do not misunderstand me. That's the shows and the movies are filled with action, but usually it's more than just action. I do find the Kelvin movies are more style over substance, whereas the old Star Trek was more substance over style, and that seems pretty consistent with all the modern Star Trek, Picard, Discovery, Strange New Worlds. The movies are good for what they are, but I feel like you kind of have to turn your brain off and not think too far into it, enjoy the ride. They do honor Star Trek, these Kelvin movies, but the more you think about it, the more you're like, well, that doesn't make sense. Yeah. That doesn't make sense either. Well, that looks good, but once again, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And this movie is no exception. So this movie takes place in 2263, about 3 or 4 years after the previous movie. It takes place slightly before the original series would take place, but the timelines don't align. They're currently on their 5-year mission, and it's a deep space exploration where it's not like they never go back to Earth, but they're pretty much out there for 5 years. It doesn't mean they're going in one direction for 2.5 years, then one direction back, but they're just sort of exploring things, I guess at random, I don't know, to a point.
And they were 3 years into it.
Yeah, so they're about 60% done with it. The movie came out in 2016, so it's been 8 years at this point since we have a Star Trek film. But there is plenty of Star Trek on TV or streaming, whatever you want to call it nowadays. I like the movie. I don't hate it by any means, but the sort of solution to the movie is just so stupid that it almost ruins the entire film. It's not too different from Into Darkness, which is not a bad film, and the ending part made me not dislike the film, but, it really hurt the film. This one has really the exact same problem. So these Kelvin movies, in some ways, mirror the original one. So we have the first film, 2009, and that sets up Kirk getting the Enterprise. And if you go back to Star Trek 1, the motion picture, it also sets up Kirk getting the Enterprise, but in a different way. He had the Enterprise before, he's an Admiral, blah, blah, blah. Star Trek 2 and Star Trek Into Darkness is sort of a remake of Wrath of Khan. We have Khan, and a lot of similarities, even mirrored. And then this third one, we have the Enterprise getting destroyed. Just some similarities, but the plots are completely different. So the movie starts off with another sort of dumb scene. Honestly, all three of these, well, the second one and third one start off with similar stupid scenes.
Yeah.
And Kirk is trying to negotiate with some alien race. I guess he's sent from another alien race to make peace with this alien race, and he's a sort of neutral ambassador. He's offering them a gift, which is some weapon they found. And they're like, what do you mean they stole it? He's like, no, they found it. They're trying to honor you with this. I think they said they found it in space or something like that. Long story short, this giant, sort of menacing-looking animalistic race is yelling at him, and they're like, they want to eat us! And he's like, what? And they all run down and start attacking him, and then you find out they're about this tall. And it's funny, but dumb at the same time. But it's not really, really dumb. It's just a little bit dumb.
The CGI is kind of bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's very obviously fake. And 8 years ago, honestly, I've seen CGI 20 years ago that looks better than this 8 year ago CGI. But that is just the way it is sometimes. I imagine the budget for the film probably is less than the previous two, as they progressively made less and less money. As I understand it, starting 2009 was a financial success big time. Into Darkness, more or less broke even, and then this one actually lost money. It wasn't a complete ridiculous flop, but it not only didn't make a profit, but it actually lost money. Once again, that's not unusual for Star Trek. But they're trying to communicate with this alien race. They start attacking them, and then they beam Kirk back up the ship, and he beams 2 of those little things with them. It's just kind of pointless, although it is relevant, I guess, later in the movie.
Yeah.
So after the opening scene, they go to a big Starfleet space station called Yorktown. Yorktown is pretty far out there. I believe the Enterprise is going to be just exploring this nebula, and Yorktown's pretty close to it. A little fuzzy on that part. They go to Yorktown, and you get to see Sulu's husband and daughter. Now, it was established that he had a daughter in Star Trek Generations. I think it's really cool them sort of bringing that back. He had a family and a daughter that he didn't really get to
see grow up.
Yeah, just see him on occasion or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's the sacrifice you make if you're in Starfleet, because a lot of the ships didn't have families back then. on the Yorktown, they receive a distress signal, and it's from some woman who's saying, my ship is marooned or crashed on this planet nearby. I need help, someone who can navigate through the nebula. And Kirk's like, oh, our navigation system is most advanced in the fleet. We can do that for you. And of course, Starfleet being a humanitarian armada, they help this woman. So they take her to the planet. She's like, that's the planet. They get there, and they're detecting a ship. Like, okay, there's a ship coming. Red alert, and it's a huge swarm of small ships, and we later find out they're mining, not vessels, but mining drones.
Yeah.
And they keep being referred to as bees or a swarm during this movie. And they attack the Enterprise, and they kick the shit out of the Enterprise. They actually, it's a pretty cool battle, actually.
Yeah.
It's real intense and very well done visually. And it's all these small ships, and once they realize they're under attack or not doing well, they're like, warp us out of here. And all the small ships actually destroy the 2 nacelles off the Enterprise, so they can't warp out of there. And they can't even use full impulse because the ship's messed up because missing the nacelles, and it's trying to draw power from them, so they actually have to separate the saucer section, which the little swarm kind of does for them. I mean, it separates it, but they still have to actually separate the last little pieces. And it turns out this little device that Kirk had at the beginning was offering the aliens is what the swarm is after, because all these little ships are sort of hitting the hull of the Enterprise, and they're opening up, and people are going in there, and now they're having sort of fights on the Enterprise. And like I said, it's very well done, high stakes, intense.
Enterprise is destroyed again.
Yeah, of course the Enterprise gets destroyed. It didn't last as long as normal, but honestly, it's been 6 years since the first film at this point, something like that. They've been on a 5-year mission. Before that, they were on missions. The 5-year mission's not when they started. So they're probably together for about 5 years on the ship. And the original continuity Enterprise was 25 or 35 when it got destroyed, but that's, So they're all taking their escape pods, leaving the Enterprise, and the swarm is taking the entire crew. They're intercepting the escape pods, they're stealing people on the ship, and only a few people actually sort of made it without being captured. The Enterprise itself is caught in the gravitational pull, the planet's getting sucked down, which seems very familiar.
Yeah.
They did something very similar, but not with the Enterprise in the last film. And as they get down there, McCoy and Spock are on one of the enemy swarm ships, and then Kirk and Chekhov and the alien woman that sort of betrayed them and tricked them into going there are the only 3 that are together.
Yeah.
Then we have McCoy and Spock elsewhere on the planet. Pretty much everyone else has been captured at this point.
Yeah.
And you don't really know what's going on. And honestly, even after you've seen the movie, you still don't really understand what's going on. But, it's sad to see the Enterprise. They did a good job of, it took a beating, and then it took more of a beating, and then it went down to the planet, it crashed, and it's not the first time we've seen the saucer of an Enterprise crash on a planet either. In addition to those 4 or 5 people that made it to the planet, Scotty launched himself out of a photon torpedo and actually landed on the planet. He gets attacked by other natives that are presumably people that the swarm captured and maybe they escaped or living on the planet. And then some woman comes to save him, and he's like, oh, thank you. And then she starts taking all his stuff. He's like, no, that's my property. And she asks him if she'll help him. Will he help her? And he's like, well, with what? And she's like, I want you to fix something. You're an engineer. And he's like, okay, well, seeing as how I'm probably not going to get any better offers today. All right, lead the way. So he goes with her. Meanwhile, you got Kirk, Chekhov, and that woman. They're going back to the Saucer Section Enterprise to see if they can access the sensors and find the rest of the crew. They get there, and they were able to get power to it, but Kirk wants to go get that device where he hid somewhere on the ship. So he takes that woman with him, and he confronts her with a gun. It is like, you betrayed us, let us here. And she's like, yes, the swarm destroyed my ship, they stole my crew, and he said he would release my crew if I did this for him. And some reason he wanted to capture Kirk specifically, isn't that right or not?
Probably because it was Federation.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he mentioned Kirk's name when he was attacking him on the ship.
He knew who he was,
And I don't really know why. I don't think it's really explained at all, honestly.
I don't remember.
His motivations are really weak. The main villain, his name is Crawl. He's played by Idris Elba, who was a very, very popular actor at the time, and he still is today. And I actually like him. You can't tell it's him at all. He's under this heavy makeup.
Yeah. No clue.
So...
He looks kind of Klingon-y, though.
Jemadar-ish, almost, like lizardy.
Yes.
But, so he takes the woman with him to keep an eye on her, and he gets this device, he finds it, he hits it, and she's like, she takes his phaser, takes the device from him, and she's like, do you trust everybody? And he's like, no, not really. And Chekhov's behind her with a phaser because he knew that she was tricking them.
Yeah.
And he didn't actually give her the device. I think it was like an empty thing.
It was empty, yeah.
So he, of course, goes and gets it. But she brings all of her swarm friends, I don't even know what to call those things.
Yeah.
Crawls, soldiers, or whatever, and they're trying to get that device from them. We don't really know what the device is, what the importance is, and Kirk doesn't even know, but it's important enough for him to destroy the entire Enterprise, so it's got to be something bad. And he's trying to get away. And they have a kind of cool little scene where they get outside the ship, they're on the hull, and they activate the propulsion or whatever, and it pushes the entire section over, and they're sort of walking on the outside, and they all sort of slide down, and it crushes the woman. It's like, good, bitch, kill her.
There was some good,
But it was cool scene. I mean, it was cool, actually. I liked it. I thought it was, visually pleasing, kind of cool. Then they are wandering the planet. They end up meeting Scotty and Jade, is that her name? Jayla.
Who looks like she's from Star Wars.
Whatever, it's fine. A
lot
of the modern designs look Star Wars-y, but that goes for all of like the modern Trek stuff. It just doesn't have the same sort of traditional classic feel to it.
Yeah.
Whatever. Meanwhile, Jayla and Scotty, she took her to his home, which is an old Federation ship. She saw his logo and she's like, what is that? And he's like, that means I'm a member of Starfleet. And she's like, what is that? And he's like, it's my crew. She brings him to the USS Franklin, which is a crashed ship on that planet. It's from about 100 years prior. Almost exactly. I think it was from 2166, if I'm not mistaken. They're from 2263. None of that is super important.
Yeah.
But the USS Franklin is there as a crashed Federation ship, and it's kind of like, oh, well, what are the odds? So Scotty meets Kirk. We finally got 4 of the main characters back together, plus Jayla helping them. He ends up finding, the signal of McCoy and Spock, and he uses the transporters, beams them back over.
Yes. But before that, when McCoy and Spock got out of the ship, Spock was extremely
injured.
Yes.
And he pulls a shrapnel out of him and uses some laser to heat up some metal and cauterizes his wound. And then Spock's confessing to him that he's planning to leave the Enterprise, go back to New Vulcan, because Leonard Nimoy's original Ambassador Spock that went back in time, and now there are 2 Spocks in this time period, has passed away, which is sort of in honor to Leonard Nimoy, who passed away before this film. Rest in peace, Leonard Nimoy. And I forgot that they honor that in the film. I think it's pretty cool. And he's like, well, I need to go and honor his legacy and help rebuild New Vulcan. He even mentioned to Uhura, which they've been dating in the first 2 films, he mentioned to her that he thinks he should go to Vulcan and help procreate the species. Of course, that sort of led to their breakup, I guess. All off-screen before the film. So finally we have, what is that now, 6 of the main characters together? No. So Uhura and Sulu are still...
Oh, 6, yeah.
No, we got Kirk.
Yeah.
And we got Spock and McCoy, and we got Chekhov, I guess, and then Scotty. So there's 5 of them, plus Jayla, so... Yeah. And their whole plan is, we have to rescue the crew. Save them from Crawl, and Jayla's warning them, no, do not go there, they will kill you. She's like, I was raised there, they would take people every day, we would hear screams, never see them again. And we find out that Crawl is sort of taking their life force, allowing him to live longer, and it's sort of... like mutating him into some like lizard type thing. It looks weird. I don't know. Maybe he's taking the characteristics of the species that he's taking from, because some of the other ones on that planet looked ish like that.
Yeah.
But none of that is like matters.
Yeah. Well, and it's not explained.
Not at all. There definitely was some stuff left out of this film. He, all of a sudden, he has Uhura and Sulu, and he's like telling them, I don't know, like how Federation is weak. And we are strong, all this stuff, and like, he's like, peace is your weakness, and it's like, okay.
Yeah.
But then also he just grabs these 2 people are like tied up, and like, you don't really know what's going on. I don't know if I missed something, but it was just like random out of the blue. But it explains why he's still alive 100 years later, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Scotty explains to Jayla that the crew is like a family or whatever, and they want to save the crew, and she's like, she sees it. Kirk is listening. She's like, is that how you feel, James T. Kirk? And he's like, all I know is we'll do better with you. So she helps make a plan to save the crew. Kirk makes a distraction. Of course, he finds this motorcycle that he really likes. in the background
that
of the Franklin. Yeah, which is ridiculous why they would even have that on the Franklin. And it would still be there. After the ship crashed, it'd be freaking splattered against the wall or something. But and why would they have that there? I mean, they can't even use it.
Yeah.
But it's just another plot convenience and trying to be cool. But Kirk had a motorcycle in the first movie, blah, 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 you know.
Yeah.
And you have Jayla listening to, I mean, is it Beastie Boys? Or she's listening to something, almost sounded like old school rap, like from the 80s or something like that.
I didn't recognize that song.
And it's kind of dumb, also.
Classical
and
music.
it's foreshadowing to some stuff that's going to happen later. They do refer to the music as classical music, which is humorous, if nothing else. But Kirk goes on a motorcycle to make a distraction. And they use a hologram and have like 20 different motorcycles. No, it's making good distractions. They're all shooting at the wrong ones. Mm-hmm. And they beam, Spock, McCoy, and Jayla in there. Mm-hmm. And their plan is to free the crew. Mm-hmm. Which they do pretty easily. They free the crew. Yeah. And they're able to beam 20 people at a time. And I love that he mentions when he beamed McCoy and Spock over the first time. These transporters aren't meant for cargo. They've never been used for people. But some slight alterations also make that work. Mm-hmm. Because in the old Enterprise time period, which is more or less when the Franklin is from like 6-7 years after Enterprise, their transporters were not meant for people. And in the show, they use it a couple times for people. But they were always nervous using it and that sort of stuff. Yeah. And I like that. They're sort of... honoring that to a point and you know, keeping it like, sort of consistent.
And also that McCoy was afraid of transporters.
Well, he said it felt weird too, because that's like an older kind of transporter. That's why he said, well, that's not actually meant for people, it's meant for cargo. Another thing I want to point out is the Franklin that crashed on that planet, this happened pre-Kelvin time period. So in the Prime universe, the Kelvin or the Franklin is also on that planet, and Krall is presumably there and didn't do these actions. He's probably still marooned and stuck there. Yeah. Whether he's draining life force of people and still alive, you know what? It makes you kind of wonder. Yeah. But it'd be kind of cool if in the Prime Star Trek one day they visited that planet and found the old Franklin there crashed or something like that. Yeah. Just kind of cool because these events happened 100 years ago, whereas the Kelvin stuff happened like 25, 30 years ago. Just something that popped in my head.
Yeah.
So they free the entire crew. They're beaming them back 20 at a time, and they get really everybody saved except for Jayla and Kirk. And they have, I don't know, like a device that, like a transponder or tracker or something that allows them to beam. She loses hers. Kirk sees her, drives on the motorcycle, hits it right when he goes up a ramp, and then like signals her somehow. She jumps off. They grab hands, and it beams her at the same time. And it's like honestly impossible for that to have ever worked out. Like just for him to time that right, and for her to like know what he's trying to get her to do. It just. It's ridiculous.
It's a movie.
But yeah, whatever. It's fine. That's like I said, turn your brain off a little bit, enjoy the ride, whatever.
Yeah.
So at this point, they're back on the Franklin, and the main guy Krall, he has this weapon because he finally did get the device. One of the crew members had it like in her head. She's an alien race, had like I don't know, sort of finger type thing. Yeah. And he was going to kill Sulu, and she gave him the weapon. So he has this weapon, and this is like a weapon of mass destruction somehow. Mm-hmm. We saw it used on her, just disintegrated her. So I guess anyone who breathes it, because he was trying to put it into the Franklin's atmosphere, or anyone who breathes was going to die. And for whatever reason, he wants to wipe out the entire space station, millions of people there. And it turns out he is the captain of the Franklin. He's a human who was originally a Mako, which is a military officer before the Federation was even formed. And once the Federation was founded, they dismantled the Mako, and he eventually became a captain because he was a really good Mako, I guess. And I don't know if it's PTSD or if it's just he felt like the Federation abandoned him because they crashed on a planet, no one ever saved him. It doesn't really make sense. That's the biggest problem with this movie is his motivations are just so thin and weak. Well, that's probably the second biggest problem with this movie that I have. I love the fact that they're referencing the Enterprise time period. I love the fact they have this ship called the Franklin. I love the fact they have this captain who kind of went bad. Honestly, that's very original series-y. In the original series, they often found captains like on a planet that were going corrupt. They were going to the Prime Directive. They were like controlling the planet or had gone bad. That happened numerous times. So it's like, okay, but his motivations are so thin. It's like he kept saying, "You guys are weak. We had struggle, made us strong," and he mentions the Xindi War and the Romulan War because we have the Xindi War, which was during the Enterprise show, and the Romulan War, which took place just a few years after the Enterprise show. And we know, based off other Star Trek lore, like in the original series, that there was this big Romulan War that led to the Neutral Zone being created, And it led to them not seeing the Romulans for 100 years until the original show, and they actually had never seen them in person until then. You know, it's kind of cool to reference these things.
Yeah.
I like Easter eggs, references. I like them a lot. And this movie was full of them. Enterprise stuff, the Franklin. I like it. The Enterprise, being destroyed. It's cool.
Yeah.
So we have Krall that wants to take this bomb or weapon or whatever of mass destruction and destroy the entire inhabitants of the Yorktown, this big spaceship with billions of people, and I don't really understand why.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to like Federation at peacetime. He's just a soldier that couldn't adapt to the future. He mentions, I have to watch as our people break bread with the enemy. And but for his solution to be to just wipe out millions of Federation citizens, it just doesn't make sense. He's not even pushing him back into wartime, which felt like his motivations at first, but that's not what he's doing. He's just trying to just kill him or show him that things are not so safe out there. I mean, he mentions being at the edge of the frontier and the frontier pushing back. That's just my biggest problem. His motivations are I don't get it. He wants to protect this Federation and fight these wars, and then he achieves peace. He's like, you won the war. And that's why he's like, I have to watch my people break bread with the... I don't know. It's just kind of dumb.
Yeah.
So the whole swarm is leaving this planet and going toward the Yorktown. And they know they have this weapon, and they're like, okay, we have to save the Yorktown. So they're on the USS Franklin, which has crashed. And they make this stupid, horrible canon mistake when I don't get how they can make such bad, errors. And they say the registry, I think, was NX-52 on the front of that ship. Maybe it was NX-56, something like that, but it's... The original Enterprise was NX-01, and they had the NX-02 and 03 being built, and you saw them at the end of the show, and that was the first Warp 5 vessel ever. This is the NX-52, I think, and it's from about 7 years after Enterprise. And they mention it's the first Earth Warp 4 vessel. How could it be the first Earth Warp 4 vessel if they had the first Earth Warp 5 vessel 7 years earlier? How can they mess that up so bad? I mean, honestly, the Warp 5 thing was a huge deal in Enterprise. And how many people are, hugely involved with Star Trek or, know Star Trek very well that are involved with this film that, let that stupid error in there? And that sucks. It should have been a Warp 6 vessel. I know people who don't know Star Trek watching me are like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But it's such a huge, error and such a dumb oversight. It almost seems like it should be intentional, but it's definitely not. They just screwed up. So they get the Franklin going, and I like the design of the ship. It looks similar to the original Enterprise from the Enterprise show, which was an NX-class ship, I believe. It's a kind of dumb scene.
It's from the Prime timeline, so it's not...
Exactly. And they have to, for some reason, drop off a cliff to gain, enough, momentum to, go forward.
Because it was built in space.
He mentions,
it wasn't made to
jump-starting it, and somehow that's jump-starting... I don't know. It didn't really make sense to me, but... Long story short, they get the Franklin to go up into space. This is an old ship. They mentioned having, pulse cannons or something like that. It was the right terminology for the Enterprise time period. So they're going to save the Yorktown, this giant space station, and they really don't have a plan. They're just like, all right, load up the weapons.
But
what else can they do?
Does.
Yeah. Well, what is? I mean, they have to. They're just going to sit there and let millions and millions of people die, or they're going to do something about it.
Yeah.
They're going to do something about it. And they come up with this plan, and so they're hearing the Yorktown distress signals. They know they're already under attack. But they come up with this plan that I guess McCoy and Spock tell them because they're on the ship, or somehow they're understanding the way the ships are communicating with each other. They're all in synchrony and harmonious, and so they're going to play something really loud on this old frequency that's going to distract them and cause them to lose their harmoniousness and crash into each other. It's so dumb. And they play the song by the Beastie Boys, which is I don't even hate that song, but it's so dumb, their solution. Cringe. And it's the same, it's very cringy, it is. It's the same song they played at the beginning when Kirk was stealing his dad's car, driving onto the cliff. Yeah. And so they slam it super loud, and all these ships just blowing up everywhere, and it's
But then, you can't hear in space, right? No one can hear you scream.
Yes, but this is not out in space, this is on the radio frequencies that they're using.
Yeah.
But it's really, the Beastie Boys are how you're going to save the day? It's so dumb. Yes. That is the dumbest part of this entire movie, is that. And then Krall's motivations are just weak and thin as hell. And I mean, I guess he just went crazy by keeping himself alive and draining. I don't know. But that is a very original show type of thing, like the captain that has gone sort of rogue or gone bad. Mm-hmm. But then he wants to just murder millions of people, and I hate to say it, it's just like, why? What is he wanting to accomplish? I don't even know. But he gets on the Yorktown, him and 3 of his ships, and they all have people in it, presumably. The Franklin also gets in there. They're flying around. They're like underwater or something.
Yeah.
Once again, Federation starship underwater, and they catch all 3 of the ships and make them impact into the hull. Somehow Krog gets off, and he has the weapon. He's getting ready to put it into their atmosphere processing, breathing system, or whatever. So anyone breathing is going to die, and of course, everyone there is breathing. Yep. Kirk gets up there, and they have this sort of low gravity fight, and it's okay, and that's where you find out who Edison is, and he looks a little more human at this point. And once again, I don't know why he looks more human at this point, like he's devolving or something, but
or he's I don't know. Just trying to fit in with the
maybe he was trying to make himself look that way. I don't know. You do find old ship recordings and stuff, and it's kind of cool. They have Enterprise-esque uniforms, and you see him and his crew, and it's just kind of cool. I like that sort of stuff, and that is sort of Star Trek-y. A lot of the times they would find an old ship and find old logs, what happened to them, and
Captain's log.
There are a lot of things I do like about this movie, even though there are some things that I complain about. If you completely shut your brain off and just enjoy the movie, then bam, you'll enjoy it. But if you think even just a little bit into stuff, you're kind of like, well, that makes sense. That makes sense. What the hell's going on here? And all the Kelvin movies are kind of like that. I like them for what they are, but style over substance, unfortunately. So they shoot Krall into space. They shoot the weapon out of space. They save the day.
Yeah.
And at the end, Kirk declines Vice Admiral. He gets it. They said it's yours, and he's like, you know what? No, I want to stay on the ship. I want to fly.
Yeah.
And then Spock also decides to stay with Kirk. And Spock gets old Spock's possessions, and he sees this photograph from the Star Trek VI film, which is at the very end, where it's the entire bridge crew, they're older, they're together, and he's like, it seems like that makes him want to stay. And I actually like that. I love seeing that picture with the original cast.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, how it is done in the film.
And like you had said that he realizes that they were meant to grow old.
Grow old together and what they would accomplish. I mean, a rare original Spock telling him, you cannot deprive yourselves of what you will accomplish together or whatever. And it's a good feel-good moment. And if this was
I was crying during that in theaters at that part. Yeah, I remember that.
This one?
Yes, because it, gave homage to...
Oh, yeah, but crying?
Yes, and Spock, Leonard Nimoy had passed away.
Yeah. But it's actually cool, and if this is the final Kelvin movie, and it sure seems like that's the case, for that to be sort of the ending, it's very fitting, very sort of appropriate and justified to see the photograph from Star Trek VI with the entire old cast, and knowing, I don't know, it just sort of ties it all up in a nice little bow, and it's a nice homage to the original timeline, and this timeline, and, a little bit of connection there. I personally wouldn't mind seeing another Kelvin movie, even if it's 10 or 15 years from now. You could have an aged crew working together just like they did in the old times. I think that'd be a lot of fun. And that's exactly how the original movie started. They started 13 years after the show was, and they went on through the mid-90s, and they were pretty old at the end. And, no, I'm just saying that could be kind of cool to see this cast older. Of course, Anton Yelchin, rest in peace as well. But you can just check off he transferred out or something. It wouldn't be that hard,
Yeah.
I don't know, there's a lot of, I think, still potential with this universe. One thing that I believe I'd read they wanted to do in the first film, but William Shatner declined, was find a recording from him that maybe Spock Prime had brought with him, and the young Kirk was going to see this recording the old Kirk saying something, and that would have been kind of cool to see something like that in his possessions as well. Because... William Shatner is the man as far as Star Trek goes. Maybe not nowadays, but in general he was. And it'd be cool to have one last time to see him, doing something in the franchise. He's probably not going to be alive that much longer. He's mid-80s at this point.
Yeah.
Getting a little off topic. So the movie, that wraps it up, and at the very end, Kirk, Spock, the whole crew stays together. They go to have a drink, and then they're in this room that's sort of seeing the new Constitution class ship getting built, and it's the USS Enterprise, NCC 1701A. Just like they did in the original timeline. First we had the NCC 1701, it got destroyed, then they gave them the exact same ship, labeled the A, which is kind of cool. Then you have the B, the C, the D, the E, which was in the other movies, and the F, and I'm pretty sure the G. It goes on and on and on. The Enterprise even showed in the future a potential Enterprise J. But it's cool, and then you're like, okay, so it's going to continue. It's going to keep happening. Just like the old movies, when the Enterprise got destroyed in Star Trek 3, then you have Star Trek 4, they're on a Klingon bird of prey, they go back in time. At the end, it's just kind of like, what are they going to do? How are we going to continue? And bam, here it is. Oh, here's the exact same ship that was destroyed, just with the letter A at the end. But I like it. I do. And it's like, okay, cool. And I know they've been trying to make a fourth movie for a long time, and I think the fact that these movies are making less and less money makes them want to invest less money into them, and some of the cast members have blown up, so it's just, I hope it happens eventually. But the odds are not looking too good.
In favor. Yeah.
So, the movie. I complain about it being directed by Justin Lin, who's like an action director, but honestly, the directing, I would say, is not my problem with the movie. It's some of the writing and just some of the weak plot points. The solution with the Beastie Boys, I swear they could have come up with something better than that. I know that's like cool, but it's also just so dumb. They definitely could have come up with a better way to stop the swarm than literally playing loud, old school, which they refer to as classical music, which I do enjoy. I think that's kind of fun. And then Krall's motivations are just so weak. They somehow needed to just strengthen that a little bit. Like the Beastie Boy found a different solution there. And then give you more reason why Krall feels abandoned. Maybe he thought their stress signal went out and he thought they were ignored. I don't know, something.
Yeah.
It just, why does he want to murder these millions of Federation citizens, which he spent his life protecting in wars and all this stuff? I mean, I get it. Sometimes soldiers have a really hard time adapting to, life after war, but most don't try to kill millions and millions of their own people they protected.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. It just doesn't fully click in my head. It's just so thin, and so that's my biggest problem with it. Visually, it looks good, and the parts that are supposed to be intense, like the ship battles, are very well done. The ground battles also very well done. Krall's an intimidating enemy. The Easter eggs are good. There's stuff I like and stuff I don't like. It is probably the weakest of the three Kelvin films. I said my favorite is probably the first one, and then Into Darkness, which I do like a lot, and this one, which I don't hate at all. But it just has some problems. Definitely has some problems.
Yeah.
And what movie doesn't? But I mean, if your writing is kind of rough and thin, it's hard to have a really good movie off of thin plot points.
Yeah.
So if I were to rate this movie, I mean, my first thought is a 6 out of 10 because there's a lot I do enjoy. But there's stuff that just makes it not as good as I wish it was. It looks good. It feels good. The crew, the acting's fine. No issues there. Just the plot points are weak. Yeah.
Same thing. I would just do a 5.
So I gave Into Darkness a 6.5, and I think, in retrospect, I kind of want to push that up a little bit. But every time I think about it, the end, just the whole part where Kirk dies comes back and within 10 minutes.
Yes,
so stupid.
that brings you back down. Yeah.
But beyond that, the movie's actually really good. This one, it's just the plot points to me.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. That's it. That's the 13 Star Trek movies. If you're curious what we thought of the other ones, there's been a video on each and every one of them. This is the 13th video. And I believe I had read today that they actually finished filming the Section 31 movie they've been working on. That means that's probably going to be another year or so before it comes out. But it's not going to get a theatrical release. It's going to be a streaming movie. That's kind of cool. We're going to get another Star Trek movie. It's been a while. So I'm going to guess 2025 for that. 9 years later. And I would assume that if this gets good views, they're going to keep making Star Trek streaming movies. And I hope they do. I hope they make them in the time period and plots that I like and plots that actually make sense. Please. So, I hope you guys enjoyed our reviews of Star Trek movies. It's been a long time since we did the first one. And here we are, finally doing the 13th one.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully they will make many, many more Star Trek movies in the future. And, I mean, honestly, you know they will. Even if the franchise dies again, eventually it'll get resurrected. Mm-hmm. Like a phoenix, it always comes back. So this is D. Hunter and my lovely wife, Patricia. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you liked the video, press like below. If you have anything you want to say about the video, add to the comment section. If you want to see additional movie and action figure videos from me, press subscribe. Do appreciate when you do that. Once again, D. Hunter, my lovely wife. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, live long and prosper.